Okay, awesome. Looks like we're about to get started. Checked all my buttons are done up. My fly's not down. We're ready to go. The important things.
Hello everyone. So we're here at not our last session, but almost, with Shawn Warner. Yes. So Shawn Warner is a best-selling YA mystery author. He's also a TikTok sensation. So he'll tell us more about this.
Sensation.
Yes.
Yes.
And he will help you with some tips and tricks on how to keep writing and make sure your book actually sees the light of day. Thank you, Shawn.
Sure, thank you. No, I'm not going to. Right. I'm an old paratrooper, so I'm used to shouting at 250 rowdy people. I'm pretty sure you'll be able to hear me, but if you cannot, please raise your hand. I will switch over to the microphone. This is an introduction to my writing, and it is exactly that, my writing. It's my mental framework, how I approach the different aspects of writing, from getting my idea all the way through publishing. I think this is an undervalued and underlooked aspect of writing, excuse me, because our mental framework is how we are disposed or predisposed to each and every step along the way. And we need to define that for ourselves because that goes into our brand, which is a presentation all of its own. And that brand is hugely important. So this is an introduction to my writing. So who am I? My name's Shawn Warner, and I wrote Lee Howard and the Ghosts of Simmons Pierce Manor. It was my debut novel. I was at a book signing in a grocery store in America, of all places, and I had been there all day long. It's like 9 o'clock in the morning, all the way through, skipped lunch, manning my tables, trying to sell my books. This is about 3 or 4 in the afternoon. There was a lull. Nobody was talking to me. I was bored. This guy named Red is his TikTok handle. He came up and saw me sitting there, thought I was in despair when I was just tired at this point. And he asked to make a TikTok video and post it, and maybe it would boost his numbers and help me out too. That video went viral. I became Amazon's #1 young adult bestseller. I became Amazon's #1 bestseller of all books in all genres. I have hit 220,000 followers on TikTok, 10,000 followers on Instagram. I have over 7,000 reviews on Amazon, and I'm still holding at a 4.5 out of 5-star rating for this book. My numbers on Goodreads are pretty similar. I outsold Stephen King for 5 minutes. He came back, he crushed me horribly, but I'm claiming my 5 minutes.
You claim it.
The book is available as an audiobook. It's been translated into multiple languages: Spanish, Portuguese, Polish, Italian, a whole bunch of languages. A huge number for a debut novel. Over 100,000 copies sold. For a debut novel, that's incredible. The rights have been sold for a TV or movie deal, fingers crossed. I have no idea because they hold those cards pretty close to their chest, but I'm hopeful it'll happen. I would love to see it on the big screen. After it went viral, and it went viral over here on TikTok, after that I was flown out to New York with the person who made the TikTok video and was on the Today Show. While I was there, Inside Edition did an interview with me as I was roaming around Times Square. And these are some of the other local, national, and international news agencies. So like I said, this is an introduction to my writing. It's my perspective on writing and how I frame things. And this is probably the first and one of the most important hurdles that I had to come to grips with. Writing is a business. My life changed when I embraced that. Writing is a business. I and you as writers, you are the company Books are your product. Yes, they are art. I'm not going to downplay that. I'm not going to say that's not true at all. For your first draft and your second draft and your revisions, but the more you revise, the more you edit, the more you polish, the more your art is turning into a product that consumers are going to want to purchase and invest in. I'm going to come back to this in just a few slides, and you'll see how that interacts with some other parts of how I deal with the landscape. Okay, here's some facts of writing. You have to study the craft of writing. I do not care if you go to university and you get your master's degree in writing or fine arts, or if you, like me, study it on your own and learn how to write. You're going to have to put in the time and the effort to study the craft. Spell checkers will not save you. They will overlook words that should be one way and they'll say they're wrong. So you have to be a little bit above average in spelling. We've already heard grammar. Okay, I am not a big grammar fan. I find it boring. I had to get over it, and so do you. Grammar is hugely important. Consider this sentence. There is their books that they're going to want back. Perfectly okay sentence. There are their books that they're going to want back. Nothing grammatically wrong with that sentence. But if you put it in your work, an abomination of a sentence like that, you better have a good reason. And no grammar checker or anything else is going to find that and tell you, no, that's not how you want to write your books, unless you have a good reason. Above all, you have to, that's not how you want to write your books, unless you have a good reason. Above all, you have to study what makes a good story good. This is not formulaic. This goes back to something like 200 BC when Aristotle wrote his Poetics. And we're trying to figure out what is art, what makes good art good, what makes a good story good. Notice there is not a rule number 2 on that slide. After this, you're done, you're on your own, you're free to do what you want, but you have to do these things. Now, these are 3 books that I found helpful in my journey. Save the Cat Writes the Novel by Jessica Brody. It's probably the one I like the most. It's very popular right now. It lays out how to structure books, the skeletons, the formats, and things like that. Story Engineering by Larry Brooks. Also, very good book on how to lay out your stories. This last one, The Hero with 1,000 Faces by Joseph Campbell. Boring, but that's where the hero's journey comes from. And if you are going to call yourself a writer, you are going to be familiar with the hero's journey, and that's where it comes from. Joseph Campbell was an academic, so yes, it reads like a textbook, but it is a good book. At least look at the hero's journey summaries. They're all over online. You type it in, you're going to get flooded with information. Dirty little secret. Every craft book that you read on structure is going to say the same thing, and you have all got it way back when you were 8, 9 years old, what we would call the 3rd grade, and it's the 3-act structure. What they do is they put in more points along the way and say, no, there's 16 acts, there's 24 acts. Or they change them and say, no, these aren't acts, they're beats. Okay, it's the 3-act structure. Every single one of them say that. But they all say it differently. Let me kind of expound on that. Here we have 2 pieces of music. There's a musician in America, his name was Frank Zappa. And he said, once you move past needing music to define an identity, you can move into pure music appreciation. At that point, all music, regardless of what it is, becomes little black dots on a page. So over here on the left, Moonlight Sonata, Ludwig Beethoven, one of my favorites. Over here, not Beethoven, that's a song called Eruption by Van Halen. Eddie Van Halen, again, another one of my favorites, a phenomenal guitar player, even if you don't like that kind of music. But if you look at it, it's still little black dots on the page, just represented differently. All those structure books that you read are going to say the same thing. The point is, find the one that speaks to you, that speaks your language. Save the Cat might speak your language. Who knows, maybe the hero's journey is the one that's speaking your language. But read enough of them so you know what is speaking to you, so you can make what I said earlier was a good work of art. All through this, you want to keep proper perspective. This is another huge learning point for me when I was trying to wrap my head around this whole big thing of writing. Remember what I said about writing as a business? We had somebody give a presentation earlier. 80% of rejections are not commentaries on your writing. How many of you have had rejections? Just show of hands. Okay. How many of them were so thrilled inside? You felt so wonderful because you got that rejection. They hurt. But that's not really the right perspective because it's not a commentary on your writing. It's not, oh, your writing is awful. That's not what they're saying at all. Remember what I said, writing is a business? These are business decisions, not criticisms of your writing. Agents are looking at market trends, charts, graphs. They're asking the magic 8 ball. They're doing all kinds of stuff to figure out what's going to be going on. So keep working at it. Keep going, because that perspective alone, that it's not your writing, you're waiting for the market to change. So let's move on to the actual nuts and bolts of writing and how I envision and how I approach that in my head. The best thing about writing, you get to play pretend like you were a little kid. I absolutely love it. I will die fighting on that hill that this is the best part of writing. It's amazing. You get to play pretend like you were a little kid. It's just wonderful. For me, my writing all starts with daydreaming. Some people start with world-building daydreams. Some people start with, I don't know how a romance person would do that because I can't write romance. Sorry, hon, I'm not romantic. But it all starts with these daydreams, conversations between characters or whatever. Now, I don't write these down. The ones that recur over and over and over are the ones I pay particular attention to. Some people do write them down, and that is perfectly okay. But don't discount this daydreaming part. I have said this so many times to people who write because I didn't get my 8,000 words in today, or whatever it is their writing goals is, or I looked at the computer all day and I didn't write a single word. And they get so down on themselves because they think writing 100% is words on the page. That is not all there is to writing at all. If you dreamed a scene, if you thought of a backstory, if you had an imaginary conversation with your one of your characters, it sounds crazy, but yeah, we do that as writers. If you imagine them in an argument or in a conflict, if you did that imagination play, you wrote that day. Don't discount that. Okay, so you have your idea. How can you tell the bomb idea from a dud? My smart aleck answer is, if you figure that out, let me know, because you and I are going to make a fortune. We are. Seriously, there's no way to know. And this is why you can't write to trend. It's a huge thing that's, oh, this book came out. Oh, I want to write what's trending. There's so many books are out like this. You can't write to trends. By the time you get the book written, let's say you're prolific and you get it out in 6 months. Then you edit it, another 3 months. And then you self-publish it, package it, get it together, or you put it out for a publisher. Anywhere from 1 to 4 years have gone by. And if you think what's trending now is going to be trending in 1 to 4 years, might want to step back and rethink that. You can't write to trends unless you can figure out what the market is doing. Again, you and I are going to make a bunch of money if you can. The honest truth is there's no such thing as a dud idea. Only dud execution. Goes back to learning the craft. You see how this all kind of goes back? This goes back to learning the craft. Now, this isn't 100% true. You are not going to have a character who kicks puppies, abuses cats, or is a horrible human being as your main character and expect a reader to get behind that main character and pull for them and pull for your story. So there are some limits to that, but actually it's all about the execution. And so keep that in mind as well. Okay. I said that I have, these imaginary things that I get these ideas, and when they recur, they come up. And then I do what I call playing the what if game. What if fat old man comes to give a presentation on writing, but he actually starts talking about theoretical calculus and stellar cartography and all kinds of crazy things. And what if the more he talks, the more you understand his outlandish math? What if he's actually an ambassador for an alien race, and he's promising that when the rest of them come, they're going to improve mankind and they're going to take them places we've never been before? What if the truth is the reason he's so fat is when they all get here, they're going to turn us into people burgers? Okay? The what if game. Now I think I've played that enough, so I have enough to go forward. If I have enough interest in this idea, if I think it's going to have legs and can run, I start to write the beginning of the story. And I'll either in my head know where the ending is, or I will actually write the ending. But for every project, I always know where the story starts and where it ends. Then comes the hard conversation. How many of you have gone on an extended vacation with family or friends? You're in close quarters with them forever. Yeah, you know exactly where I'm going. Can you stand to be in the company of these people? We as writers put so much effort and work into our characters, they become real people. And we become just as sick of them as we do our kids. We love our kids, but we're sharing a house with them 24 hours, 7 days a week. Get out of my sight. So can I stand to be in their company for months or even years? What about the rest of my life? Because when you publish that book, it's out there. It's not going away. You have to promote it. And it's always going to be there, and it's always going to have your name tagged to it. Not a trivial conversation to have. If the answer is yes, I begin the actual work of writing. Now, we always hear of plotters and pantsers, like there exists these two things on the spectrum, and that's you're either one end or the other. Nope, I'm here. I'm a hybrid writer. I plot, I write, I plot, I write, I go back and forth and back and forth. I'm always trying to plot a little bit ahead of what I write, but I don't like plotting myself into a corner. I know some people do the whole book that way, and that's perfectly okay. That's just not me. Tools that I use. Plotter. It's this great tool for outlining and plotting your book. You can make your own templates. It comes with some templates already made to lay out your work. And then in my actual writing, I like to use Scrivener for the same reason. I can map it out into chapters, my chapters into scenes. I can break it up into the 3-act structure, and I can. It's very organized that way for laying out. And I can drag and drop, which is really good. Oh, this would be better over here. Drag, drop. Organized that way for laying out. And I can drag and drop, which is really good. Oh, this would be better over here. Drag, drop. So now it's time to actually get to work. I have my premise, I have my idea, I have my start point, and my end point. Plot-driven stories belong over here. It's sad to say, but it's true. Plot-driven stories where your story, all that stuff that happens in the plot, I think they're pretty much extinct. You're not going to get a lot of traction writing a plot-driven story anymore. Everything today that I'm seeing and the books that I'm most engaged in is all about characters. And this is some things about characters. I asked this question to some high schoolers once. Finish this sentence. Perfect people blank. And I came up with, well, perfect people aren't real. There's no such thing as a perfect. And then this one boy, I swear, he's probably the brightest kid in the school, making the worst grades ever. The dude, perfect people suck. Yeah, perfect people are annoying. They don't exist. They're not real. So your main characters have strengths, they have weaknesses, and they have flaws. You need to have all those things in your main characters. In other words, your main characters need to be human. They need to be identifiable. This last one. Without friends, they all fail. Harry Potter had Hermione and Ron. Okay? Captain America has the other Avengers. They all have friends and they all fail without them in some way. Let's move to our villains. You notice it's almost the exact same. Because villains have weaknesses, they have flaws, but they also have strengths. They actually have good parts to them too. Notice that they don't have strong friendship ties. One of the big differences between your villains and your main characters, your protagonists, is that friendships are a means to an end to your villains. They're not emotional bonds. They're not growth elements. These people are going to help me get farther down the line. And that's all they are to them. My opinion, and what I try to do, is they believe what they're doing is right in some kind of way, however twisted that might be. The means justify the ends if the ends are good. In the Avengers, Thanos wiped out, like a third of the galactic population. He thought he was the savior of all of it. He was the hero in his own mind. Dolores Umbridge from the Harry Potter stories. Loyal ministry. She was very loyal. She was the epitome of what it meant to be patriotic to the ministry. They hold worldviews that justify their selfishness, their greed, and their hedonism. And the more enticing you can make that, and your readers go, oh, well, maybe they're not wrong. Oh, but that's a terrible thing to do. But maybe they're not wrong. Yeah, you've got a good book there. You've got something that the readers are going to latch onto. So the external struggle is your plot. Something happens, and your characters react to it. And it's that simple. This is a plot-driven story. Something happens, your characters react. The internal struggle, this is the theme or the moral of your story, and I think most stories kind of need this. Something inside the character, remember I said your main characters are flawed, there's something broken, there's something lacking inside them that they need. Until that gets fixed, your character continues to react, okay? It just stays a plot-driven story. It's just stimulus response. They start acting what agents and publishers, their fancy word for that is they gain agency only after they begin fixing whatever's broken in themselves. Okay? This is your story. This is what your story is about, not the plot stuff. This is it. Now, I'm kind of slow to pick up sometimes, and sometimes you'll hear the plot as your A story, and the character arc, which is what this is, as your B story. And me being me, A becomes before B, so A must be more important than B. I was wrong. B story, your character arc, is the important part of your story. The plot points, the twists, the turns, all that suffering is just pinpricks, prodding your character along through this emotional growth. That's how I envision my stories laying out and how I look at the progression. They're just pushing the character. That pain and all that stuff that's happening, prodding the character farther along through this arc until they both come together at the end. Let me start some final thoughts here. These are some things that as I travel around, present my books, and do other talks, people have asked me a lot of. One project or multiple projects? I personally like multiple projects running at the same time. There's my main work in process, my WIP. And it takes about 90% of my focus. It's what I'm working on most of the time. Okay? Then I have side projects going. Short stories, graphic novels, movie scripts, anything at all. Even different books or something like that. Sometimes this main story isn't talking to me. It's not telling me. The main characters in that story are not telling me the story to write. And I'm just waiting for it. And you sit there and you wait, and that's what people call writer's block, is you're waiting for those characters you invented to tell you their story. And so you could either sit there, be mad, be frustrated, and get more and more down on yourself, or you'd write something else. And then when you're writing something else, those juices get flowing, those neurons get firing, and then all of a sudden you can't get this guy to shut up. You know? That's just the way it is. I was writing Homeland Insecurity, my second book that I published. I was about halfway through when Lee Howard jumped into my mind, my debut novel. She nagged and nagged and nagged until I had to stop writing Homeland Insecurity, write Lee Howard and the Ghost of Simmons Pierce Manor, go back and then finish Homeland Insecurity, because that was how they were talking to me. That's how my characters were talking to me. And it's important to listen to that. So Lee Howard started as one of a side project, and she became louder and louder and louder, and I couldn't hear my first product. So I had to stop and write the other one. And that's okay, and it turned out to be a huge success for me. Finish what you started. Oh, huge. I was at a book signing to one of the people who was talking to me. So you can't finish a story until you finish the story. It sounds silly to say that, but it's true. And you have to finish it, and it's a habit. It becomes a habit of finishing what you started. Even if it takes years, you finish it. One of the ways to do that is to get the story out. First-time writers fall into this error, I think it's an error, of this urge to edit as they go. They never move on to chapter 2 until chapter 1 is perfect. Okay, you know what happens there? They never move on to chapter 2. Get the story out, all the way out, from it was a dark, stormy night to the end. All that polishing and everything else, that's what editing is for. Be gentle with yourself. It's okay if your main work in progress isn't talking to you. Be kind. Don't beat yourself up for it. Go for a walk. Do that imagination play I was talking about earlier. All starting to come together. Dude, that's an aspect of writing. Be gentle with yourself. Because you have to take care of you. Stephen Covey, in his 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, points out, you are the goose that lays your golden eggs. Don't kill the goose. So the key to being a successful writer is perseverance. You have to stick with it. You never know what's trending. So don't write to trends, write your passion. The trend will come around to your passion eventually. Once you get that written, celebrate that success. Put it out there, and then start writing something else. Persevere in your writing. If I did not sit through however many hours I was at that book signing until that guy came up and made that video, even though I was tired and I wanted to go home, I wanted to eat, if I didn't sit there through all that, would have never have had the success that I was blessed to experience. And that wasn't my first book signing by any means. That wasn't my second, third, or fifth. Okay? So it's driving on when you feel like giving up. It's accepting that huge parts of your work needs to be deleted. It could be, they say don't kill your darlings. Well, you got to kill your darlings. Okay? Huge slots of work. It could be a chapter or a paragraph, a chapter. I had to rework the entire second half of Homeland Insecurity when somebody pointed out an issue with me. And the whole second half had to be redone. Don't give up. It's a rite of passage. If you've had to delete huge things and you're a ball of tears because you had to delete weeks of work, congratulations, you're a writer. It's sitting through hours of whatever, and it's collecting rejections. We've talked about that already. Editing is yuck. I do not like editing. I do not like editing. I do not like editing. I feel I click my heels. I do not like it. I really don't. Tips to help it better, join critique groups. I think that is one of the most important things that a writer can do as early in your writing career as you can do it. Get used to reading your work aloud and getting feedback on that work. I say if you are writing and it feels like a lonely, isolated profession, you're doing it wrong. You're here. You're networking with all these other writers. You're out here. You're not alone. Critique groups, huge. You'll get feedback from people who've been where you are, who've written a scene similar to yours and knows what works and what doesn't, who has way more experience in the publishing world than you might have. Leverage that. Have disinterested people, not family and friends who love you and will lie to you, read your work, okay? Disinterested people. I homeschooled my own kids, and what I did is I made them make an audio recording of every essay they wrote for me as their instructor. Every device nowadays has a recording device on it. Make an audio recording of your work. I personally don't like that the way that Word and some other things will read it for you because it's so automated, you don't get it. Remember what I said about grammar? You need to know grammar. Okay, a period has a meaning, as does a comma. A semicolon rest is a different feel than an em-dash rest, which is totally different than an ellipses. And you're not going to get those nuances from some automated thing reading your work like a machine. And those nuances of grammar, of punctuation, it's part of writing. It's part of that grammar I said you have to know. It's huge. And it makes a big difference in tone, in pacing. So yeah, read your own work back. Make sure it makes sense to you in those regards. You're going to go sick of reading your manuscript when you do this, when you're editing. I mean, to the point you're going to feel physically ill. Well, go be physically ill, come back, and you'll do it again and again and again. Got to get over it. The next one, controversial, again, since this is my perspective, yes, I think you need a professional editor. I don't care if you're traditionally published, self-published, hybrid published, indie published. I think you need a professional editor. Here's why. As the markets are changing, even the big five, but all publishing is reducing what they're willing to spend to get your book to market. I have talked to so many agents in different conferences and places that have told me great writing often gets rejected because there's editorial issues. It's too much work. They can't sell it downstream because it's just going to be too much work and the publishers don't want to invest in that. It's just a changing in the landscape of the marketplace that we as writers have to adapt to. I personally feel, and I use professional editors. Is it expensive? Yeah, kind of got to get over that. My wife and I, we always kind of joke around, you got every time we spend money, you got to spend money to make money. Well, we're waiting to make it. But so yeah, you have to kind of embrace some of these investments. And then back to what I was saying before, quit looking at writing as your hobby or an artistic expression unless that is all it is to you. If you want it published and out there on the market, then you have to shift that brain of yours into you are your small business, writing is a business, books are your product. And you have to make that shift. And it can be a difficult thing to do. Writer's block. We had a whole session on writer's block. My take on it is, yes, it is real. It happens to every writer, and it will happen to you. I think it's the number one reason young writers quit writing. They get writer's block. They don't know what to do. Their book goes in a drawer, and it never comes out of that drawer again. And they're done. Writer's block can be overcome My view and what I try to do is write my way out of it. It's like you paint yourself in a corner. Yeah, you feel bad for a while, but you're going to have to paint yourself out eventually. It's the same thing here. You have to write your way out. That's why multiple projects are huge for me. Because if I have writer's block on project A, I'll write something on project B, maybe even B and C before I get back to A, but I'll always get back to A and I'll write myself out when I have a new idea. Remember what I said about imagination. Go for a walk. Envision a conversation that might help your plot move forward. Do that imagination play. That's part of writing. Do not discredit that. And perseverance, said before, it's the difference between wanting to be a writer and I am a writer. Don't be afraid to write it wrong. I love this. I don't know where I stole this from. I did steal it. This is probably some of the best advice I've had. Don't be afraid to write it wrong. Remember what I said, highlighting huge sections and deleting it is a rite of passage in writing. It's going to happen. So write it wrong. At least you wrote something. And then when you get back to it, you know, hey, okay, that didn't work, you know. And it might be, I've done this before. I've wrote something, oh, this is brilliant. And I get up the next morning and I review what I read the night before. And what was I thinking? It happens. Don't be afraid to write it wrong. It's okay. That's what editing is for. That's what revisions are for. Write it. Get it out. Okay, this is my latest book, Homeland Insecurity. I'm going to leave this up here because, like I said, writing is a business. Part of the business is marketing. I'm advertising. And please, if you have questions, now's the time to ask them. I will do my very best to answer them. Wow, I was that good? Really?
It was that good.
Please.
Have you always written?
Have I always written? There's a couple of answers to that. I started my writing career at 6 years old. My mother was reading stories to me, Billy and Blaze, about a boy and his horse. I loved them so much. I remember laying on the floor of my bedroom with one of those fat pencils and the paper with the dotted lines in the middle, how big is your capital letters and your lowercase letters, trying to write my own version of those stories. That's the first time I remember trying to write. Growing up, this was back in the late 60s, early 70s, artistic endeavors were not valued. And I was told all growing up, Shawn writes really, really well. But there was always that caveat, but you can't make a living at that. And I was young enough and struggling enough in school, surprisingly, that I believed him. So I didn't write professionally. I always wrote, but didn't take it seriously. It wasn't until I started homeschooling my kids, I thought, you know what, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try to do this seriously. I was somewhere around in my late 40s, I guess, when I started writing seriously. So depending on how you want to look at the answer. Yes?
Johnny Carpenter wants to know how many books have been published.
How many books have been published? We're doing live. This is part of the marketing and stuff. I have 2 published books right now, Lee Howard and the Ghost of Simmons Pierce Manor and Homeland Insecurity are the 2 books that I have published now. I am working on follow-ups to both books.
So what are they about?
Okay. Part of that marketing and stuff, you need a tagline. Some quick one-sentence sort of things about your books, right? So, Lee Howard and the Ghost of Simmons Pierce Manor is the story of a teenage girl who teams up with a ghost with multiple personalities to solve the mystery of her parents' murder. That is a tagline. You need one. Homeland Insecurity is the story of a group of teenagers who grow up dreaming of being secret agents, but before they're ready, get caught in a web of vengeance spun by a terrorist. One-sentence tagline. Develop that for your works. It's really handy. It's memorable. We have people parroting it back to us, so it's really kind of nice. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Do you have audio versions of your books, and how important are audio books when you're publishing?
The question is, do I have audiobooks available for my work, and how important are they? I'll answer the second part of that question first. Any form of revenue stream is important, and it's that simple. Yes, I have audiobook versions to both of them. The Lee Howard and the Ghost of Simmons Pierce Manor is read by a lady named Teresa Baca, and she's incredible. I got chills when I first heard it. For this book, Jesse Bernstein is the voice of all the Percy Jackson books.
Okay, you have to tell the story. How that happened.
Okay. This is why I have my wife with me. She keeps me on track. So when I was doing the audiobook, they sent a form. And one of the questions on the form is, who can you imagine reading this book? And I think they're looking for rock stars or TV celebrities or movie actors or whatever. I put down, I really like the way Jesse Bernstein read Percy Jackson. And that's all I said. Because I did like the way he read young YA books. Then I get this email a few months later. Hey, Jesse Bernstein agreed to read your book. What? I was stunned. I didn't know what to make of that. And then I got an email later from Jesse Bernstein. Hey, just read your book. I think it's awesome. Huh? What? So, yeah, it was really incredible. So Jesse Bernstein, the voice of Percy Jackson, is the voice of my Langley Irregulars. Yes, ma'am.
I was hoping you were going to show us the TikTok video. Changed your life. Is it still available?
It is available on TikTok. In the interest of time, I didn't put a lot of videos and things in here. But it is available. It's pinned. It's on our TikTok.
I think it's probably pinned, yeah.
Yeah, it's probably pinned on our TikTok account if you have one. If you can understand why it went viral, please tell me. Because it's just, I don't understand it. I don't get it. Other people tell me that it was my personality. I don't know. I'm just very grateful that it did. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I was going to ask you, I mean, thank you so much. It's such an awesome conversation you've had with us. But how do you stop yourself from being, I want to use the right word, being earthbound? I mean, despite your success, how do you still be very earthbound, still humble, despite this phenomenal success?
Oh, bless you. I don't think anyone's ever called me humble before. You know, honestly, that's come up before, and I don't think that I come across that way. I'm just me. I made a whole bunch of very stupid mistakes when I was young, as young people are wont to do. And I'm a person of faith, so that contributes to it. Just a whole slew of things. If I get too big of an ego, I have help. And no, don't discount help. My wife is a huge help on my marketing, and so I would be lost without her. We're making a video right now to post on TikTok. I couldn't do this and talk to you. Don't be afraid to get the help. I was saying to somebody earlier, if you have teenagers in your house, you have live-in experts on social media, and leverage that. And if they don't want to help you out, say, okay, I'm going to start charging you rent. Yes.
So, how did you publish, and did you go wide, or did you have a single publishing platform as a target for your work?
The question was, how did I publish it, and how did the publishing come about, and was it wide or
Multiple platforms, or just a single platform?
Multiple platforms, single platforms. So I submitted both of my books over and over and over again to agents because I wanted and do still want to be represented by the Big Five for one of my works. It's just a career goal, just like having a script made into a movie, one of my scripts that I wrote. I also want to write a graphic novel. These are career goals that I have. And so one of mine is to be published by the Big Five. I got passed over rejection after rejection after rejection. My wife heard about my publisher, Black Rose Writing, which is an independent publisher near San Antonio, Texas. I submitted my work to them. They said, sure, send it on, let's see. And we worked together to get the book published. So I'm independently published by a small independent publisher. It works out great. I have no complaints about the job they have done at all. I'm really thrilled with them. The distribution and stuff like that is all on them. The marketing and things like that is all on me. But again, those dirty little secrets, the big 5 publishers, remember I said they were cutting back on editing? They're also cutting back on marketing. So writers, especially early writers or new writers, your expectation for marketing your work is growing, not reducing. So you're just going to have to shoulder that burden no matter what route you go. Anybody else?
So Kelsey has a question for your wife, but I'm going to pose it to you. What are some of the best ways to encourage your spouse on their journey?
Oh.
And maybe you can answer from what I've done for you.
Woo! I see some nights in the doghouse ahead of me. No, honestly, just being supportive and believing in what you're doing. Liz has been behind me 100% since the beginning. She had faith in my writing. She thought I wrote good works. She thought my ideas were good. And just that verification from somebody who I have emotional ties to and investment to means a lot. Yes, it means something when I have, like I said, I have over 7,000 reviews on Amazon. And they're ranging, like I said, about 4.5 out of 5 stars. So they're good reviews. Nothing compares to hearing this woman say, that was pretty good. I liked it. Yes.
You said you wrote some scripts. Is your process the same for screenwriting?
I'm sorry.
Is your process the same for screenwriting?
Is my process the same for screenwriting? Pretty much it is. Yeah, I get an idea. I play that what if game of, how can I make this more interesting? Like Lee Howard, this girl showed up. Okay, this girl, her parents were murdered. Yeah, been there, done that. This girl, so she goes to live with rich people that she didn't know she was related to. Okay, again, nothing new there. The house is haunted. Well, that's a little different. The house is haunted by a ghost with multiple personalities. Okay, now we're cooking. And I keep doing that. And I do the same thing with my screenplays. It's like, what can I do? How can I what if this? Until I reach the point that I think it's going to be interesting enough to be, first of all, to sustain me writing an entire novel or screenplay. Because, a lot of times they run out of steam. Sometimes it's like, this is a great idea. And yeah, it's a great idea for a short story. How are you going to make this last for 80,000 words? It's just not going to work. So yeah, the process is pretty much the same. The layout and the format and things are different, but the process of getting to that point, yes, it's the same. Yes, sir?
You said marketing is very important. What would be the first steps in marketing, and how much budget should you put aside if you were promoting the work yourself?
So the question is how much marketing is important and how much budget to set aside for that. Any and all marketing you can do is going to be important. It doesn't matter what it is or where it is. The hardest part about publishing, being published, and this is true, again, Big 5, self-published, and all the spectrum in between. The hardest part is being noticed. You're standing in the wilderness screaming, I am here, I exist. Yep, and anything you can do, anywhere. Small independent bookstores do book signings there. I discovered there was a program at grocery stores. So I signed up for that. I had to pay a little bit for that. As far as how much can you invest in stuff like that, let's have another little dose of reality for a minute. Your first book, don't care how you publish it, you're going to lose money. Your second book, don't care how you publish it, you're going to lose money, but not as much. It's not until your third, fourth, or fifth book that you start breaking even and getting going. I don't know any writer, and this is just my personal experience, who does not either have a other full-time, part-time job, or bless my life, somebody who is helping support you with their income to get you past those formative years of writing. So as much as you can spend without living under a bridge. You know, there's no set answer for that. It's each individual's budget and their budget constraints and their commitments too. Family comes first always. Yes?
What made you choose your genre of young adult rather than adult? Was there...
What made me choose the young adult genres? I've always had a soft spot in my heart for those kids that live in that corner house of mischief and real trouble. Probably because that was the house I lived in. One of the things I did in the past is the house I lived in. One of the things I did in the past is I was a pediatric therapist, so whatever drew me to doing that also is drawing me towards writing about kids. It may go back even farther to when I was in the infantry as a paratrooper. I have very little patience for adults. I expect them to actually adult. So that may be part of it too. I will let kids get, not my kids because they didn't get away with anything, but I let other kids, I would let them get away with a lot more than I would let an adult get away with. So that it may be, I don't know, it may be that I read Peter Pan about once a year to remind me to be a kid, you know, because I think that's important. It goes back to imagination play and things like that. So it could be all kinds of childhood drama and psychological mess. We have another.
We have time for
one more question.
There was one back there.
Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm not an English native speaker, and I'd love to know, have you ever seen any writers who write in a second language and writes pretty well? And any suggestions to help with language barrier?
The question was, have I known anybody who's English is a second language who has written well? I honestly don't know because I don't spend a lot of time asking people's backgrounds in their writing and stuff like that. So it's hard for me to answer that question. And also, I don't investigate how the books are. I'm like, when I read, I'm part of the masses, part of the consumers. I just read the books. I don't really do a big bio research on the author. I'm sure there are authors out there who have done that. I know there's, just here I've met many aspiring authors who are in the same position, that English is their second language and they want to write. I want to say that the ones who leverage that, their background, and sometimes throw in a little bit off language into their writing and writing from the perspective of their background and their culture that they're coming from with some of those dialogue issues, I want to say that they tend to be pretty successful too. And it just depends on how well you master the English language, if that's the direction you want to go in. But by all means, go for it. You got nothing to lose.
Yeah, and just more rigorous editing because you want to master.
I believe I've been asked to end it there. I thank you all so very much.